Welcome to another episode of Unscripted with SST, the LinkedIn live show where we deep dive into the real, unfiltered world of IT, cybersecurity, and business technology. Brought to you by Secure Strategic Technology, we're here to cut through the noise, share expert insights, and tackle the challenges shaping the future of managed IT services. Live, raw, and unscripted. Joining us today is Bo Elston, the COO of SST, a seasoned voice in helping businesses navigate the complex intersections of cybersecurity, compliance, and operational excellence. Bo, great to have you here today.
Great to be here. I don't know if I like the season part. That makes me feel really old.
Yeah, I mean, we all look old right now. Well, hey, let's jump right in. So the theme for today is cyber insurance. I guess I just start off with, cyber insurance is now a staple in risk management conversations. But what most business leaders or don't realize is that their policy that they have is only as good as their ability to meet the requirements. So today we're going to kind of address and unpack some of the top pitfalls that companies are facing around cyber insurance. Um, uh, I guess a great place to start with that, Bo, is what is cyber insurance?
Yeah, so cyber insurance, that's the protection from the financial consequences from cyber incidents. So those would be things like ransomware, business email compromise, data breaches, all of those costs. It's going to help you kind of recover the cost of instead of being able to recover, instead of full bearing the full cost of it, right? It's going to offset some of that. It really, the policies themselves it's not just a kind of a one size fits all. So policies themselves are kind of broken down into some different areas too. So really these policies, they cover a few different things like the incident response, and that's going to be, like the forensics part of it, figuring out what data was accessed, how they got in, all of that kind of stuff, the real geeky technical type of stuff. Really, there's a significant cost associated with that, figuring out what happened and what we need to do. There's also a cost that it could cover related to business interruption. That would be, lost revenue because you couldn't have production because your systems were down. There's legal costs that are associated with it. It could be the fines, lawsuits, compliance requirements that you don't meet because of that. It'll help offset some of those costs. Could be ransom payments. You hear this all the time. The cyber ransom that happens, extortion costs.
Although we don't necessarily want to just blindly pay ransom, do we?
No, absolutely not. And sometimes it's even illegal these days, but there are some financial mechanisms in there to help, reimburse for those costs. And then another big thing that we talk about all the time, Tracy, is reputation management.
Yes.
Like it's how do you handle that? And often, getting the public relations and making sure those communications to make sure that your business reputation is maintained. So significant costs associated with that too.
I mean, you're having to hire professionals outside to build what is that messaging and communication need to look like, right? And those consulting engagements are not cheap, that's for sure. Right. So I guess in a nutshell, really it's basically helping you recover without bearing the full burden of all the damages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So then I guess the next question seems to be, why do we need it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of when we deal with mostly like small and medium-sized businesses, and these days they're just one of the prime candidates, right? They are seeing like a real big influx of cyber attacks. So making sure you have protections is really important. And one of the reasons is because of the financial impacts. Like smaller businesses don't have the deep pockets to protect against these, the operational disruption, the financial recovery of like doing all the forensics and figuring out what happened and then hardening your systems. I mean, all that takes a lot of money, and generally the small and medium-sized businesses, they just, it's hard to fund that stuff. So making sure you have, policies and some protection in place to help, for that risk is very, very important. And it's just also remember, like some people think that the insurance itself is just kind of it's a shield, and like because you have it, like I don't have to worry so much about what we're doing because that's there and it's just going to protect me if something bad were to happen. And and you got to be doing more than that these days.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, just to throw in a little an SMB cyber stat in 2025, 1 in 5 small businesses that experience a cyber event go out of business. One in 5.
Yeah.
That's scary stuff.
I mean, I was just doing, when we were talking about this, just, did some search and just, give me a list of, recent attacks. And it's like, I think ChatGPT dumped, it was like 20 different incidents that were small, medium businesses in Wisconsin and in Minnesota and Iowa, just, some manufacturers, some healthcare, all different sizes. So, there's just so many examples out there, of these things happening these days.
Mm-hmm. And it's back to, like we don't want to take on the entire burden of the damages associated with this. We don't have the resources in house to be able to handle this. All kind of comes together there. I guess.
Just one other thing too, though, is like, I think a lot of these people realize like they just think that I have the cyber insurance and like if something were to happen, I'm good. But like long term, like for these businesses that are impacted like this with these incidents, like they're long lasting impacts. And like, this insurance kind of helps from that incident, but like the big impact that these have, and again, kind of the reputation management that like these significantly disrupt businesses. And you still see like people these days, most businesses that we deal with have some sort of cyber protection. They have a policy of some sort, but you still see these stats of like how many of these businesses go out of business after having these, even with cyber insurance, even with all of this. Like, so those protections, they help against that incident, but long term, they're not enough to keep that business running. So that's where we're talking today is some of this too, is like, just make sure it's not just like you're good because you have insurance.
Right. Like we'll get into that in a bit. Like what do you need to couple with the insurance, right? Before we dive into that, like can you just talk a little bit about maybe some, and I think you did slightly, but you want to dive a little bit deeper into what are some misconceptions around cyber insurance?
Yeah, so a few different things like the coverage itself of like, I have a policy, so I'm good, right? And we talked about the different areas of cyber policies and what they cover. And so, conversation with some customers have been like, oh, I have a policy. I'm not exactly sure what's in it, but I'm covered. We have sufficient coverage. And it's like, well, these policies aren't written to cover everything, right? They're not a complete blanket covering every possible scenario. So making sure that, what that coverage is. Like, are there pre-existing things that they're going to exclude? Is it, what does it handle for like when human error? Like if they were the source of the breach, sometimes there's exclusions. And just, I guess another thing is like vendor breaches these days, third party type of exploits. What kind of protection do you have against those? So, hey, I just have this $1 million policy and I'm good with everything. I don't know whether you're probably not the case. So make sure you know exactly what's in that policy. Another thing is like the ransom, right? So like part of it is, hey, this policy is going to cover ransom. So like if something, worst case scenario, at least I have that, right? Maybe not the case. Like a lot of times these days, and legislation out there that you can't even pay ransom. It's illegal to fund these threat actor groups. But sometimes they just don't, that policy will just exclude it. We're not, this doesn't cover ransom payments. Just something good to know. And, and the last thing, and I've heard this from time to time with customers is like, I got this policy. So we're talking about putting in like the protections and doing IT the right way. It's like, well, I got insurance for this. So like, I don't really need to spend any money on, doing IT the right way because I got this insurance policy. And it's like, well, doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah. So I guess maybe the next area of focus here is what are the insurers requiring now? Like I know this has changed. I mean, think about before COVID, what the requirements were. Like people were just getting a sheet with 5 boxes on it, and all you had to do was check them.
Yeah,
and still filing claims possibly and getting things covered, right?
Yeah,
but those days are gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can think back where there was, when we first started seeing these policies come in there and our customers would ask us to help fill these out. And yeah, it was a couple just like, are you doing, do you have antivirus and do you have a firewall? And yep, you're good, right? And there's still some security questionnaires, right? They're doing more. They're trying to figure out that, I mean, insurance is pretty good at figuring out where the risk is and associating dollars with that. So, collecting that data is a huge part. So they're really good at figuring out what's out there. But, some of the technical things that they want to see in place, like you mentioned, it's multi-factor, right? Everything these days has to have some sort of multi-factor, especially anything that's accessible from the public internet. Just like at a minimum, you have to have that. You got to have some data backups. It's in that backups and not necessarily just making, oh yeah, I got backups, but like, where's that data at? Is it stay on the same system that production is and just a copy on there? Is it on a different device? Is it in the cloud? Is it accessible in the cloud? Like, is it immutable, right? Where you can't ever delete it or do anything to that data? Huge controls. Like obviously the more copies you have and you can't, the immutability is in place on the cloud, so you can't damage it. That's going to help lower your risk. So they want to see that. Endpoint detection and response, like having some sort of, advanced tool on the endpoints to detect threats is an important part. You got to have that out there. Training is a huge thing, making sure cybersecurity training is in place.
And honestly, such an easy thing, isn't it? Like nowadays, the tools out there, it's so easy to implement in user awareness training. Don't you agree?
But you got to get people to go through and do them too.
You do. But I think, what they have out there now is like much more consumable, short videos, very impactful.
Yeah. And making sure they're, like a lot of the stuff that we use is tailored towards like current threats. So it's, like could be, phishing is a very popular one, but if you're seeing like, I can't even think of really good examples off the top of my head for all the different ones that we've seen, but like, you'll see like, oh, there was a big threat on there. And like all of a sudden that month, like we'll get some training based on, hey, this is the thing that happened. Right. So
not stale content.
Right. So that's it's such a huge thing, like, but we see it all the time too with customers. Like, yeah, we have this tool, but is anybody monitoring and making sure you're going through it? Well, what now these days with some of these, the insurers, they're, what is your plan? What is your compliance rate with that? How many of your staff have gone through that within the last 3 months, within the last year, have they gone through this training? What type of trainings? Providing some of that proof. Another thing that's really important that they're asking for, that just even if you weren't submitting it for cyber insurance, is incident response. Having that incident response procedure for what you do when these things happen, just to if anything else, it's going to significantly lower your risk. Having a plan and knowing exactly what you're going to do, because that's not when you want to be figuring out, okay, this happened. What do you think we should do? Let's get together a meeting. No, you need to be able to react in that time, because.
So yeah, I was just gonna say, so having an incident response plan is a requirement to be able to, get cyber insurance, but it's also such a critical piece for your business. So you're not running around with your hair on fire in the moment, right? Like in the moment.
Yeah. And like I said before too, a lot of this stuff is, it was questionnaires previously where you could just check a box and I'm doing this. And nowadays, like we've seen a lot of them where they're, provide some additional data, provide more like what you're doing for this. Give me an example of that policy. Give me an example of your procedure. Like, it's not just like, say you're doing it. It's, you got to have some sort of proof.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and what comes to mind for me is how we've integrated a CIS framework in our delivery model, right? I mean, that is here's the policies and procedures in the proof of these controls. Like super, super important.
Yeah. You kind of, it's a lot of just like baseline controls. And I would say what we're seeing is most companies are doing a lot of those things, but not all of them are doing all the things. Right. So, just going through and meeting with customers when we start to onboard them and, we're taking a look at their cyber insurance and taking a look at policies. And it's like, what did you submit for that said you had this, right? They're qualifying for some coverages. And we're seeing some gaps out there, for what's in there, even from pre-sales perspectives. Like, we have this big policy and, we're doing all this stuff. And it's just like, some of the times you wonder, like, how did you even qualify for this? Well, they may not have known what they were even saying that they had and just checked the box. But it's becoming harder and harder where now they're, the insurance providers are coming back, like some clarification on this, like show us some proof you're doing this thing.
Well, and I mean, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but just because you're paying the premium and you have coverage, the minute you need to file a claim, then they're going to start to actually interrogate your environment and validate you really have the things that you said you had. And if you don't, you're not going to get any of these protections.
You put yourself at significant risk, because that's, part of the forensics and part of that discovery, right? They're going to go through, when you're responding to these incidents, there's tools and data collection. They know what's out there, right? You can see, it didn't have EDR. Oh, this bad actor got in through multi-factor. They just had a regular password. This didn't prompt them. Like, they're collecting a significant amount of data, and they're going to find this stuff out, right? And it puts yourself at risk for not having that claim denied and losing that financial protection that you invested in that cyber insurance policy for in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, and a lot of times I would say too, it's no fault of the customer's own. Like, they're doing the best and kind of think they have this stuff, and it seems like they're doing it. But if they're working with a provider or somebody, they have their own IT department, somebody who understands what this stuff is really requiring, then like, I'm answering this the correct way.
I mean, that's a good segue into our next kind of like area of discussion, right? So, like, what is the role of proactive IT and an MSP, when it comes to making sure you have all your I's dotted and T's crossed so that you can get cyber insurance? Like, we talk about this a lot, but proactive IT.
Right. I mean, you kind of differentiate between like your what cyber insurance is versus like your cybersecurity practice, right? Cyber insurance, just having that doesn't mean like you're secure, right? It's having cyber security practices in place, having those right tools that we talked about, like that the insurance provides, MFA, right? Making sure you have an incident response plan, doing those proactive things so you know what's in place, so you're preventing that incident, right? That's the proactive part of it, right? And part of that being proactive is making sure you're aligning IT with the insurance requirements. Like we said, it's multi-factor needs to be in place, EDR, all of those things, like making sure you have patching, all of that stuff, right? It's not just saying you're doing it when you're actually doing it. Like, that's the important part, right? And somebody's got to do that work. Like, this work, sometimes it's tools, a lot of days, you try to automate this stuff, but it's got to get done, right? That's what's lowering the risk to the business.
Well, and it's like, it's the left of boom, right of boom thing too, right? Like we know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? So what are we doing proactively to minimize the impact to our business and our operations when we experience a cyber event? And if we are doing things proactively, we're going to be able to have decent cyber insurance. It's going to help us, take on the burden of the damages, and hopefully they're a lot less because we were super proactive about what we were doing. We were very thoughtful, methodical, strategic.
Yeah, exactly.
So, in specifically, do you have anything to add with regards to in-house versus MSP? I mean, is there, does an MSP put a small organization in a better position to do the proactive stuff correctly because of more resources, more skill sets?
There's probably something to that. I mean, I think there's pros and cons to both, to be honest with you. Of like, I think internal IT obviously really masters their own environment, but I think then MSP, with seeing across industries and across different businesses and understanding how it applies, I think brings a unique perspective to it. I've kind of always said that working, in the consulting space of that's a unique advantage that, MSPs bring to the game, is seeing how this stuff is used across the board. And I think that allows more efficiency, making sure that the right things are being done, because, when you're doing it in-house or like in IT, we see some extra work being done at times where, like, I think MSPs and kind of the strive for efficiencies and knowing the value, like these are the high value things that need to be done, I think ensures that a lot of that stuff is actually getting done versus the kind of like we see some internal IT departments. I think those can be a little bit more casual, and a lot of times they're going to be a lot more procedural driven with an MSP and have some automation in place to ensure those things that say they're getting done are actually getting done. And a lot of times too with MSPs and when we're meeting with customers, we're providing proof, like we're measuring this stuff and we're providing proof that these things are getting done. Where
we have to, based on our contractual obligations, right?
Right. We're meeting with like, this is where our, like their training is at, right? We have a technical alignment engineer that meets with the customer. Like, okay, let's see where we're at from a cybersecurity training. Like, here's where we're at. Like, we're at 85%. Here's the people that didn't do those. Is that happening internal with IT? Sometimes, but then is patching at 100%? Are we reporting on that? Like those are metrics that we report to our customers and give them data. Like, yeah, we're here, we're there, like measuring that stuff. So I think there's some advantages of working with an MSP from that perspective. But obviously, the important part with all this is just making sure this work is getting done.
Something that I think is maybe worth talking about is how we've integrated CIS. Aligning to that framework is super important to make sure that all these things are buttoned up the most appropriate way. And kind of combined with that and some other things, we created this cyber check. And there's a lot of other things out there the insurance companies do that's similar to that. I mean, you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of our attempt to measure cybersecurity in our practice for our customers, right? So it's what we're doing is kind of a combination of controls that we have in place from the CIS framework, and then some other operational type of things like Microsoft Security Score as part of it, and just measurement of like tools deployment and stuff like that. So we put that together, and it gives us a score so we can see where we're at. We can kind of track progress in pinpoint areas of concern with customers. So we can also paint that cybersecurity journey for our customers too. Because, I think one of the things like, when we talk with customers from a pre-sales perspective and start working with them, a lot of them don't understand like how hard cybersecurity is, right? And that's kind of why you're seeing the industry around these ransomware and these threat actor groups, is because it's not easy to do all this stuff. You don't just buy tools and like problem solved, right? It's all of these layers of security. It's your operational things that you do that takes a lot of work to do things the right way. And this helps us measure that we're doing things the right way, right? So it kind of makes it a little bit more real, gives them a number so we can kind of understand like, yep, hey, we're moving in the right direction. We're kind of in this area compared to other customers. We're doing well. So gives them a framework of kind of a reference of where we're at, where we're going. And now we can kind of benchmark along the way and say, like after, 3 months, we're here. So we're on track. And, by 12 months, we should be here. Mm-hmm. So it kind of helps along there too, to paint that picture. And because it's cybersecurity in doing that stuff, it's just, I hear it time and time again, it's kind of like people just want, yeah, you know what, we're working with SST and like, I don't really have to get involved. Yes, we're cyber conscious. Like that's how we see ourselves. But if the customer isn't engaged in it, like there's only so much that we can do. Mm-hmm. They're the ones using the IT. They're the ones that kind of could open the door to all these other issues, if we're not on the same page and doing the right things together.
Yeah, I like we use this term a lot, the journey, the information security program. And when we talk, before clients become clients in the sales side of things, we're talking a lot about that, the journey, getting them engaged, educating them. Because if we don't increase their knowledge around cybersecurity, we're not doing our job. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be harder to do our job. And there'll be some resistance.
Yeah, and that education part, I feel real strongly with that, and that's a lot of the time that I spend with customers at VCI was going through those frameworks. Kind of boring stuff, to be honest with you. Like nobody's just sitting down and loving to go through policies and understanding controls, but like if you know what it means, and why we're doing it, it helps to understand the breadth of what's being put in place, right?
Oh yeah.
And we can also then take of like what we're trying to do and what we're covering and make sure, because it's not just like, hey, we're sitting and having this meeting, we're figuring out we're doing this. A lot of times we've decided to do X, Y, or Z. Now we got to implement it and make sure staff understand why we're doing it, right? So it just, and it's got to permeate through the organizations. Like some organizations are just, like I'm not going to worry about it. That security is generally, I think pretty much every case, like it just makes workflows harder. I mean, but it has to. There's kind of a level to it of like making sure it's secure enough and not being super burdensome. But ones that are paying attention to and understanding why we're doing it, and you have the support, those are the ones that make the change and actually secure themselves.
Yeah, I mean the approach that we take, we're definitely seeing a lot more engagement from leadership at our clients, because they are becoming educated. It's it's way different. Their understanding is way different. Q3, as opposed to the first day of onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I think we're just seeing in general, right, with the landscape. And we kind of talked about early on in this conversation, just like the risk that small and medium-sized businesses have. The high targets they're hearing of others that have happened, they may have had like some incidents themselves. So it's becoming more real because it is more real. And that's leading them to take this on and being more active within their cybersecurity practice and understanding the value of it. So there's engagement being driven by the need as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're kind of getting down to the end of our time here. I think let's leave with, can you give our listeners one action item that they should do or take away today? Like what's one thing you can give them that they should absolutely focus on or go take care of?
One thing I would say, like, evaluate your cybersecurity practice. Like, think of yourself, like, are you insurable, right? You maybe gone through this exercise before and filled out that checklist, but take some time and understand like what you've said you're doing in the organization and what you could be doing better. Because those things, like doing differently, there is a monetary value associated with that, right? It's a risk value that you're lowering for your customers, that you're not going to have those breaches. Doing right things is going to lower your premiums. It's going to qualify you for additional protection. So all of those kind of things. So thinking about that, like, am I insurable? What can I do to make myself more insurable?
And I would even say, if you are the owner or leader of the small business and you say, I don't know, because this isn't my area, you're not doing the right things.
Yeah.
Because you're not engaged. You need to be engaged. So, I mean, that's just like, if you can look in the mirror and say, yes, I don't know the answers to these, that's somebody else's. You're not, like, that's a problem right there.
Yeah. Understand your protection.
Stop right now. We need to go find somebody you can partner with to help get you on track.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thanks for, joining us today, Bo. Your insights, much appreciated. If you are listening today and you haven't looked at maybe your cyber insurance policy and or your cybersecurity posture, you need to do it now. Do not wait for a breach or event or a failed claim, for that matter, to figure out where your gaps are. Take care of it now. If you want any more information with regards to how we do it in our cyber check, definitely reach out to us on our website. There's more information, or hit us up on social media. Thanks for listening. Thanks for helping us out here today, Bo. And until next time, stay secure, stay strategic, and stay proactive. Have a good day.
See ya.